So, Matt, I know that more and more people have started to question, the whole SDR role and whether it is still relevant, whether it's still working. I see a lot of that going on right now on LinkedIn, and I know that you have quite a bit of opinions about the SDR role, how it's working right now, and also in the future. So, what are your thoughts? Do you believe that the SDR model is still relevant, or is it something we can kind of park or something in between?
There's a lot of onions to this. If I was making a bold statement, generally it is the SDR model as we know it, I do believe is dying. Do I believe the SDR role is dead? Yes, as we know it. I think it is. And so I think it's helpful to define what does that mean? And I also think it's helpful to define within what go-to-markets. So like the SDR role, the origin, and it used to be called BDR, it was called MDR, which is like market development rep or business development rep or sales development rep, depending where you fall in. It's all these different roles. Their core job was to go and book meetings. And where this like became prevalence and even became like a ladder step to becoming AE. And this grew prevalent in when lots of money was raining in through VCs for 15 years. And the play was, it was a very outbound centric. This is the time when Sales Loft, Outreach, Groove, they're all building gigantic. That's when they're building their wealth, and they're building specifically for SDRs to be able to do one function: send a mass amount of emails, coordinate it with calls, and be able to do more quantity than everybody else. And the VCs could throw money, and they could generally say, hey, I can generally understand I'm going to have a 5% or 6% creation of deals all the way to revenue, and be able to, if I put this much money into the slot machine, I can guarantee this money out. I can funnel in talent to SDRs. These the best talents will become AEs. And this model worked. It worked. And so when I say is SDR dying, what I'm saying is the model as we know it, which is a outbound focus, two-stage go-to-market model, is dying. Period. Why? And we can talk about the whys, but yes, I do think it's dying, and I even think you could call it. I think some companies would even say it's dead, like myself.
Do you think it's been accelerating now? Because I do know for a fact myself as well that the amount of email that want to find me well, and talking about the fast-paced inserts, whatever, it feel like it's been accelerating, not decelerating, like in the last like 6 months. So I definitely feel like the email, like it's getting even more now for some reason. Maybe that's because it's actually not working. So people just up the volume because it used to work. Let's just do more.
So if we keep the role, like, is the SDR role dead? And I say yes. And what are the variables contributing to the death of the model? The model. Because I actually don't think SDRs are dead. I actually think SDRs are going to be more important than we've ever thought. And they'll become strategic assets, and they will no longer, it will be a end state, not a beginning state. Meaning SDR, this is not a role you start at and then you turn into something else like an AE, and it's just a laddering. It's actually, hey, you start as SDR and you continue being that. So I'll talk about that, like what's the new model. But why is this old model dying? There's lots here. Here's some of the variables. So I can't think of them all off the top of my head. Here's some of the variables. Is if, and this is number one, outbound is less effective in isolation than it has in the past. Period. Why is it less effective? Let's just objectively, it's less effective. Less people are picking up phones. Less people are answering emails. The open rates are decreased. Pickup calls are decreased. Everything is the effectiveness of that model is decreased. The best still win, but you have to be freaking amazing at it to be able to win now. Part of the why is everybody's doing it. We're inundated with it, and thus it becomes a less effective strategy. When everybody's doing something, it becomes less. And this is just the pendulum swing or the evolution of any go-to-market motion. We have to have something new. So number one, outbound's less effective. It's because everyone was doing it as their primary go-to-market. Number two, buying patterns are just fundamentally changing. It's one of the core issues with the two-stage go-to-market. What's premise behind, I will get a BANT qualification. Let's just BANT. I'm going to have a budget. I'm going to have authority. I'm going to have need. I'm going to have timing, pre-qualified, and then I give it to an AE. And so that means, what are you not doing first? It's built around the premise that it's a waste of an AE's time to give you a demo. How angry do you make me? I get so angry when you will not get. I've already self-educated myself. My buying patterns. I'm coming to you. I've already selected you out of a handful of 10. You're on my top 3. I'm coming for a demo. And if you don't give me a demo, you lose. You lose. And you have SDRs that are qualifying me, and it's not as efficient. So number 2 is just the buying patterns have changed because of the self-education and ways we're educating in relational, community-driven places. That's number 2. Number 3 is and it goes with number 1. It's like the email or the phone is just a more personal place where you restrict the closest relationships you have. It's almost like you must earn the right to be there. We're even doing text messages now. You do not, if you text message me, I will never buy from you unless we have had a conversation in the past. So there's just like there's this culmination of why the SDR, more specifically the 2-stage go-to-market model with an SDR and an AE, it just doesn't work as well. So what are we evolving to? I think is a very interesting question. And what's working more effectively? What are the best, most efficient ways to scale? Because those are, and this is, I would call a 4th. The outbound go-to-market is the highest cost per acquisition cost, like the acquisition cost, CAC, of any go-to-market. So why is it also dying? It's because it's the least efficient and it's getting less efficient. You just can't afford it. You can't afford the cost, the burden of it as a company, unless you have VC money. And what's not raining right now? The VC money.
Especially not 2023 and onwards, most likely going back to normal there with the funding. Yeah. I mean, I definitely see that, and I do agree with you as well with the whole thing where if I reach out to someone now, I don't want to be qualified, and I don't want to have 3 conversations before I'm allowed and have the privilege to see a demo. Because as I said, I've already been through that model, and people don't want to feel like, okay, I'm in a qualification process. Am I worthy or not?
And I think for me, it's less from, does that person feel like they're worthy as a customer? It's, hey, you got the B2B buyer acts much more like a B2C buyer than they used to. The Amazonification of the buyer, if you would. I can go, for me, where I live in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US, I can go click a button and I can buy almost anything if I'm buying in the morning and get it in the same day. And so we live in this reality, right? Where if I'm a B2B, like that does affect how I think about what I'm purchasing, whether we like it or not. It's just a reality. So for B2B, if you don't show me your pricing and you don't have a ability where I can directly book a demo, I'm not buying from you. Now, maybe that's individually, but that's where we're moving. And so if we go into it like this new, what does an SDR look like in a model where people are self-educating, they are going to communities, they're getting referrals, we're becoming more relationally driven. We're like this contraction of relation. What does an SDR do? Like, is the SDR even useful? What's the new model? I would make an argument that we've already seen them pop their heads. The new model for an SDR is we're moving towards this idea of, you hear people talking about media companies, but what does it actually look like in a B2B context? That looks like we're having people who are making edutainment, who are doing practical how-to. We call them evangelists. You see them coming in the HubSpot context. You have Kyle Jepsen. He's now a full-time you know what he is? He's a freaking SDR, guys. He gets more meeting books and he drives more value than other people that are sending emails out, because people flock to him because they feel like they know him. They ask him questions and he directs them to who? AEs. So the new SDR is the person that can develop this like network and this branding that can be congealed and then be pushed towards thinking through training, through how-to, through edutainment, that is the future of the SDR, to be a lightning bolt, to be a lightning rod that attracts lightning and then directs it in the right locations. In communities, in dark funnel-like metrics, singing them. It's a very scary, because what can't you control? It is no longer waterfall math, and it takes time. It's almost like a rethinking of, are they in marketing or they're in sales? This is why there's a blurred line between marketing and sales, because there's a contraction in relationships to being relational driven, but to have relations, how do you do that? It's through marketing, and who does that? It's sales, and so it becomes this very blurred line.
Nice, like kind of some kind of a smarketing kind of person, I guess.
We
But
use
it's
smarketing to have like smarketing meetings. Yeah, it's like I
it's
think
like a
probably the
smarketer.
best smarketer. The best terms would be you start to hear things pop up like near bound.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're not doing sequences with multi-channel outreaches. Like I've built brands on those things before. You're just doing it with I will create relationship and connection first through my outreaches. So I can give an example. I'm creating this whole thing called Surroundbound. Like this is the new SDR. SDRs will surround bound people. That's what I think.
Surround others. Yeah, and another new concept. Is that your concept or
Surroundbound,
surround?
unfortunately, is something I made up. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's not unfortunately. Maybe we need a new term. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Well, new terms become meaningless over time. Surroundbound's the idea of, and you see this happening, is how do I'm going to answer the question because this is really what we want. If someone's searching a term, how do if they are thinking about, let's do digital adoption for me. If someone is thinking about, or portal replication, I think portal replication. If someone's thinking about how do I replicate a portal in HubSpot, Surroundbound is if someone thinks about that topic anywhere in the internet, in Facebook, in Instagram, in TikTok, in a community I don't own, they are being recommended Supered. Or my head's popping up somewhere with content, or someone in the company and their networks are coming. That is the goal of all marketing and sales, but that is Surroundbound, and an SDR there's specific strategies that are new to our current environment that allow us to do Surroundbound.
So basically, do you think, like, because it sounds like it's a completely different role, a completely different skill set in a lot of ways. So is it basically complete redefinition of who should be doing it, and it's more senior people? It's like, or how would you even approach that?
I'm going to address these questions, and I'll go to the approach is, is it a different skill set? No. Do we need to think about how we're hiring it? No. Does it take more support, and can you have less of them? Yes. Okay. So let's give an example. What did we measure SDRs on when we were doing like when SDR AE was in its glory state? What did we measure SDRs on? We measured them on, and it could be there's a little bit of swath here, but you measure on you would measure that on meetings created, deals created, and then before that, all activities, number of calls made, number of deals made, number of activities generated. What are you doing now? Content creation is difficult, but it's so easy. And what I mean by easy is all you do is consistency. So number of calls, how many posts on LinkedIn did you do today? I don't care about how well it did. I was like, because that's a separate, that's after. How many posts did you do on LinkedIn about HubSpot today? How many comments did you do? How many, like you can start quantifying these same things. And so it's like the same skill set. It just takes more training. You can't do as many. And there really are not the tools that allow you to do this. Although I do think of some that come to mind that I'll be putting in the Surroundbound that I have. One of them's Surf, another one's called Tableau. But they'll allow you to do it. Number 2 is support systems. If, hey, I'm an SDR and I want to talk to more people. How do you talk to more people? You have a podcast and you make a subject where your ICP talks about themselves and what they want to share. And then you have a warm intro. What does that take? Then that'll take support. Maintain it. You have to create snippets. You have to have so what does it really take? It really takes a content engine to support your SDRs. So it's a redistribution of cash into marketing with more support for SDRs. So they will be more strategic. Instead of hiring 10, you hire 3, and then you will have some kind of content cohort that you're putting them through. Some will make it, some won't, but the ones that will flourish. It's the same idea, just applied to a different machine.
And how do you see with that? Because I'm a big fan of this idea as well. That not going the kind of spammy route, thinking about, living where your customers are and like sharing knowledge, being helpful, being a part of the conversation with your potential and current customers, and facilitate for collaborative stuff. But I also see a risk there that you hire a lot of people and you kind of push, okay, let's just create a lot of noise, and it's on very low quality. They write a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. It's not very good. Don't you think there's more also risks involved in this? Because an email that goes bad, you might get highlighted on LinkedIn that someone said, well, this is a really bad outbound email. Look at this. But isn't there more like risks as well to actually have this approach?
No. No. I mean, my short answer is no. Like you said, there's risk in outbound emailing, spamming people. Yes. Just as much risk. So I think let's put this in perspective. And I used to say when I'm doing this, I have now done 2 different companies with this exact go-to-market, and I've scaled 1 to essentially $10 million rep partners, and I'm now about to scale super hit. It's the fastest growing HubSpot app ever in the HubSpot community, where we've gone to 1 million in 7 months, and we're continuing that same trajectory. So this is exclusively our go-to-market. So there's a part of me like it is more difficult and it's scary to put in because it's hard to trust the waterfall math because it's just not as, can't see it. There's actually less volume. Okay, so there's what the risk is are you going to have the trust to let people fail and learn? Are you going to have the trust people that fail and learn? Number 2, content quality does not matter. I really mean this. And here's what I mean. Because it does matter, but here's what I mean. Here's why the mindset, you need to have this mindset. What matters is consistent output of content. And you'll hear this in James Clear if you hear Atomic Habits. Like, this is the idea. They did a study where he had he talks about in his books is there was a photographer that had a photography class, and he took half the class. I'm saying there's 100 people in it. He took 50 people and said, hey, I want you to have, and they had a competition at the end of the year where they had this big production where they showed the best photography, like the best photos off. And he took one set and said, I want you to you only can submit 10 photos. And the entire semester, you only have 10 photos. And I want you to go find the best 10 photos that you can make. And they went off and they took the best 10 photos. The next one off and said, hey, your job is to take as many photos as humanly possible. There are no limits. Who do you think won? Every time we did this experiment, it was the one that had unlimited photos, and he would end up grading them separately because you couldn't compare them. And what you find is through making crappy photos, through the process of failure and making really bad results, you learn you're 1 out of 10, when your 6 becomes somebody else's 10 because you've done it more times. You started creating mastery. The same thing applies with content. So if you give someone the ability, go make a butt ton of content, and after a month, that person will just be better. They will learn the algorithm. They will learn what works. And then if you coach them and provide any guidance whatsoever on like best practices, they will outperform others. So the idea of we must have quality actually is probably the worst thing you can do when you start someone on SDRs, because they become stuck, and you must unstuck them by saying, go create. Which is why people get really good at talking on the phone, because what do you force them to do? You don't say, get on the phone and start. You're not going to learn unless you go out and do it. And then we don't apply this saying, oh, don't worry about, you can only have perfect phone calls, just wait. No, it does not work that way. Life does not work that way. Go make crappy content and you will eventually make good content.
And I think people also overestimate how many people will actually see the crappy post that you do initially. Like, people will not notice and they will not really care that much, actually.
Yeah, they're just going to scroll past it. And so when you start providing real, and you're right, it's not a bigger, it's even less risk than actually talking to someone on a human and doing it really bad.
So how would you kind of go about, because you mentioned before, like it's a lot about then it might be a smaller team, and then it's about the enabling as well, and kind of it's like when you kind of scale this up yourself, like how do you kind of enable them to actually do this well initially? Like, do you have some favorite strategies and tactics?
I've done this a couple times. I let it internally. We call it content cohorts is what we call them. And um, I'll give like three. I'll give three best practices that have come from this. Number one is people when you do hard things together, you're more likely to do them for longer. So if you have two people, you're less likely to do it for longer than if you have six people. So you need to have a group of people that are doing content together that are being measured. And so this is number two. There must be a level of accountability. And the accountability is not, hey, who had the best performing post? It is, did we all as a group like post every day? If you did, and this is number three, not just accountability, there is some positive enforcement that occurs. If we all as a group posted every single day, then we each get $10. And we use bonusly, we use this thing. So there's these three is do it in a group. You must have accountability on what you're doing. And you should be based not on performance, but on based on consistency. And number three, group based incentives. So if you don't do that, I have found there's others. So this is big three, and there's more we can talk about. There's the big three when you're creating the contour, because there's training you can provide, there's best practices you can provide, but if you like, the core is those big three. And so things like you need to meet every week. You must have places and spaces that you can have creative brainstorming. There's all these things, but again, just those big three, and everything else will work.
Yeah, and I think especially one you mentioned there with the activity base, like that's a big realization for me, like going from oh, how well did we do? Because especially in the beginning, like you're not going to do well. And it's actually quite tough in the beginning because you kind of sit there and you're looking at the engagement, nothing is happening. So just focusing on the actions. And I think that goes into so many roles in the short term. Focus on what you can control in the short term. And then if you just do it for more than a couple of weeks, which is like, I think most people do it for a couple of weeks, and then they just stop, like that action focus, I think, is so important. And combining it with, as you said there, the group accountability and shared, we win together. We also use Bonusly internally, actually, as kind of internal.
Bonusly. They're great.
Yeah, no, it's such a good tool, and it's such an easy thing. And you have like it's a really really cool cool tool for kind of internal awards. We're not sponsored by Bonusly at all, but if Bonusly is keen to do that, then I'm all ears. But no, that's. So yeah, I'm a really big fan of those things as well. What else do you have on top besides the top three? What else?
Things we've done in the so take those top three, and then if I was to add some, so those are systematic logistical points. You need to be meeting a minimum weekly, and you have to have someone that leads it. There needs to be somebody. I also do recommend having quarterly or monthly awards for a top performer, based on like your things. And I would just step back and I would think about it. You're really creating a production company, and you're helping people produce content. So there is this, if you can so do it, it's to have. What we did is had a whole production where you could have a minimum. As part of your posting, one of them had to be a video, so you can start to dictate the function in which something occurs. And if you do that, you can either give them something like a Vimeo, right? Or not Vimeo, Veed, where they can self-produce content very easily now, or you can have a production company saying, "Hey, I have 5 slots. Everybody uses them, and if you don't use them, someone else gets it." So you can give them incentives, and then so it says, "Hey, not only did you post every week, but one of your posts was a video." And so you start adding on different flavors as it gets more and more mature, and you get it. So Matt, what's an example of this in real life? Let me give you an example. When I was at Rep Partners, we led a content cohort, And I would also, we did it in seasons, and you had to sign up for an entire season, season 1, season 2, and you had to like, it was exclusive, meaning like you had to meet certain criteria to even get selected to be able to do it internally. Who was a part of that? Robert Jones. If you hadn't seen him on HubSpot, you're we had Robert Jones and making videos. He does edutainment. Shadab Khan, edutainment, education that's funny. Yes. Okay. You had Shadab Khan, Rashida. All three of those were part of the content creator, and there's some others. This point is they have driven millions of impressions for rep partners through them, and now they are creating. Now they have the muscle that it takes. They now understand. They are now their 6 out of 10 is now my 9 out of 10. They are better than me because they have just done it more. They now have the muscle, and they now have the support they need it. And so like the time it takes to create content decreases when you get good.
And how long would you, because I mean, it is still going to be, people still in the end, you got to pay the bills. Like what would be kind of, what should be like realistic expectation? Someone, they've been doing the traditional SDR, they want to kind of give this a go because they're seeing that it's not really working anymore. Like what, you mentioned there having a group of people, not just a few gamification, but what would be the timeline for a season?
So if I was an SDR in the wild, right? Because the reality is companies have to have this mindset and the first thing to get cut is marketing because you can't attach it to revenue. So first, companies have to have the mindset, and there's still very few companies they're going to say, I'm going to go all out on a surround bound, near bound, dark funnel strategy. They're just not there. That's very, very difficult to find. So what do you do if you want to transition and you want to go from an SDR or you're struggling AE? Here's my recommendation. And this is why I created the Surroundbound play. You can do a Surroundbound play in any role you are in. What you need to do is just start creating content as part of your activity. I will post 1 time per day on these. What topics do I talk about? Like it's asinine to me. It truly is. Like when people say, I don't have content, I'm like, you are absolutely and utterly wrong. Like you have so much content. The issue isn't you don't have enough. The issue is you don't know what to select from because you have too much. So just like start with, don't even think. Just like, what's the thing that made you angry today? And write about it. Did you really enjoy making 100 calls today? Write about the slog of 100 calls. Like, and you could do that in 5 different ways. And then so the point is you just take, and so the content, just do 1 piece of content a day talking about the thing that made you passionate, that triggered you, whether in a good way or a bad way, personally or professionally, and just do that. That will start creating a network. People that comment will start coming, and then start commenting. Like go to Sales Navigator, look your ICP up, start commenting on all their posts, and then add them to your post. And the way LinkedIn works is as soon as you connect with them, as soon as you comment, it actually serves all your content. And so instead of calling them, they now see you 5 times instead of calling them once. And that's Surroundbound. That's what you start getting as you start doing that. That's the basics. Create consistent content, tag people that you want to sell to. And that's it.
So that's coming from a rep, but like say that you're a company and you're kind of curious about it, but you don't want to kind of say, okay, let's stop doing the calls as we mentioned, like, cause that's probably not going to happen. But I would really love to have some of my reps to do more of this. Mm-hmm. But they might be a little bit, but I don't really want to do it, or I'm a little bit unsure about it. It's like, how do you have any ways to kind of get people excited and actually want to do it? Or is it just like, well, they just have to be excited about it to get started? Because that's something that I'm struggling a bit with. Like, how can you get more people wanting to do this whole influencer or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, it's not like it's telling people. I would be okay with giving people a choice, but if you want someone to say, hey, look, I see a change. The change is moving to, let's call it warm bound. Instead of Surroundbound is a strategy, warm bound is people like talking to people they've already seen or heard of. period. So if you could increase the likelihood that someone's talked to you or heard your name before you talk to them, would you do it? Yes. Perfect. Here's a strategy that allows you to have influence over people that you've never talked to before. Use something, and this is the whole thing's built on Surf. You can still do calls, you can still do emails, but just connect with them on LinkedIn, get their contact information, add them to a sequence, and just add commenting and posting as part of your sequencing, and try it for a month. If it doesn't work, tell me why it didn't work. If it works, I've done this with our sales rep here at Super, and he goes, Matt, you've changed my life forever. I can't realize I'm just learning this now. Here's the deal. Once everybody does it, it's no longer effective. And we'll have to come up with our next strategy. So,
as with everything, that's always how it is. No, but it makes so much sense as well. Of course, like if someone have seen you, as you say, like seen the face and the company everywhere, of course you're going to be more likely to at least, assuming there's not a generic outreach with no research before, but it's very hard to be too generic if you actually already commented, you already been engaged with the person.
Yes.
Like but it's definitely less volume. That I think that's going to be a big change from people as well, is you actually should be more personal and fewer people, but you're going to hit that way better versus just spamming 1,000 people and just hoping that it may or may not work.
Yeah. Pray and pray is not a good strategy, because you are truly praying. And for something to hit, less volume, more relevant. You can even add intent data into that relevancy through getting G2 intent, getting intent from, there's a bunch of intent data that'll give you third-party intent that you can then use to proactively reach out to people. It starts to get, the people that will win in the future are not people that use AI. Because it's going to be the people that learn really good to create relevant messaging in the moment based on, and create warm touches. That's the people that the superpower, and that warm touch and then you may be really good on a phone too. And you have that as part of your arsenal, but it will not be the first time you interact with someone. Will no longer be the phone. The first contact is no longer the phone or an email. It will be in a community or in a social location where your customers live. That's the future we're moving to. And so everything we talked about is just getting really good at first contact.
And I mean, it's probably going to be so much fun as well. I don't think a lot of people really like to do cold calling and to be cold. Maybe some people do, but I think most people are not really enjoying it. So having another process where you can actually, warm people up a little bit first, and you're also increasing your own value. Like if you're actually doing this more, you're more visible on LinkedIn, like you're also going to be more valuable as an employee. Like Kyle, as we talked about before, like his value as an employee, that's where it has most likely skyrocketed since he was doing that.
You just hit the nail on the head, as we say in the US, is when I talked about what's the difference in the A, and we could even end it on this. Like it is, when I said, is the SDR dead? Yes, it's dead in the model. The SDR is actually going to become a strategic resource for the company they're employed by. And that is a great example. Kyle Jepson at HubSpot is a strategic resource that started off teaching HubSpot classes. And the value you bring to a company demonstratively increases. Even if it's extra, it will increase if you are capturing the attention of more people in whatever ecosystem you're in. You are a strategic resource. So the SDR of the future will be one of the most strategic resources.
Yeah, no, and I so much agree with this whole notion. I'm just very this is going to be slow. I don't think a lot of companies are actually going to jump on this. I wish they would, but I think it's going to be so few, sadly, who actually do. I think many are going to be comfortable with the old way of working, and there's going to be a few companies who pull this off, at least in the next few years, and then people might start seeing that, oh, wow, this is really working. We need to change as well. And that's, I guess, is the typical cycles that you will always be having where, like when Inbound started and HubSpot just kind of absolutely nailed that playbook. And now Inbound is tough with the traditional blogging and things like that.
Yeah, outbound stuff, inbound stuff. You're right. Community-led growth is something that I think we've seen recently that has worked really well for specific companies. That now everybody's you have a few that are doing that are trying to replicate it. I think Surroundbound, Warmbound, Nearbound, whatever we're calling it, will also be a playbook I think it's actually more difficult to do it, and it will take because it's not just changing of activities. It's a rethinking of what matters and when it matters and why it matters and how you change funds. And so for that reason, it will be slower, but it will still occur. And the companies that we see winning in the next 5 years will be every single one of them will have a strategic SDR, and you will be able to name them.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But Matt, been an absolute pleasure to have you on here talking about the kind of SDR role, and really appreciate that you're taking the time. I just want to kind of end with kind of a final question before we end up. It's a little bit more in the philosophical end here. So like reflecting on your journey, you've been building a few different companies now, and you probably learned and seen a lot during the way. So what would be some kind of insider learning that has really changed your approach in business and life? Some profound insight that you've had during your journey.
So in the last 3 years, I've started 2 companies. And I'll say this is, if your identity gets wrapped into the success of the company, it will destroy you today or tomorrow. To philosophical is if the purpose of the company is to create fame and acclaim, and even to become filthy rich, I think that it will destroy your soul. You will burn out. The relationships around you become less important, and they will begin to deteriorate, and you become a lonely, bitter, sometimes unhappy person that has lots of money and nobody to share it with. So if I say like anything is like going through business is, and you're hearing this a lot. Maybe this is specific I hope maybe a specific American thing, but it would be your relationships matter more than business, but you can't just say that. You must have very specific things in life that show you people in your life that you actually believe it. Example: do you stop work at 5:30? Let me just give an example. Do you stop work at 5 o'clock so you can have dinner every single night with your family? Yes or no? There's these things that if I was talking to an entrepreneur, I would be very worried if it was their only pursuit, as it does not. It leads to a very damaged soul in my experience. And so, doing companies that you're always at the precipice of failure, and it's a scary place to be. And sometimes you just have to let the cookie crumble. See how it comes out. We have much less control than we think we do.
No, I think it is. And as you said, tying your identity to a specific outcome that you can control partly, but not fully, and doing that and forgetting about everything around you. No, I think that it's very easy though, especially if you're a founder or building a business, it is very easy to get caught up, and all of a sudden 5 years passed and you just, forgot about everything else.
Yeah, you become a shell of a person.
Definitely a bit guilty of that myself.
So it's not through me doing it correctly. This is through me having almost destroyed my marriage, or this is not and trying to do it better now. So yeah, this is scar tissue, not oh, look at me, I'm doing it well. That's what I'll say.
Awareness is always the first step, and no, but I do believe it. Right. So I think we in Europe, we might be a little bit better at it, but I think anyone who started a business has at some degree been experiencing that other areas are suffering, hopefully temporarily and not permanently though. That's cool, Matt. Look, so It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. So, where can people go if they want to find out more about you?
I would go to LinkedIn would be the primary location. Look up Matt Bolian, and I do a piece of content a day because it keeps the doctor away. That's how I say it.
Actually, some really good content. I'm not just saying that to be nice, but there's Matt has some really good content, really good posts. So yeah, we're gonna add a link to him as well. But definitely recommend to check him out. So Matt, thanks a lot for today, and yeah, been a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Stay awesome. Keep doing it big. Stay super.